So we're going to start our discussion today on project schedule management. All right, so that is what we're going to look at. But before that, I observe that some of us have not turned in our assignment and quiz. All right, and Joe, you are owing two quiz. You've not done your quiz for the fundamentals of project management and also quiz for integration. All right. Okay, and also I think there is quiz for scope management. I think I will post that so that because we have discussed about scope, I think you should do those quiz. All right, it's very very important. It's part of the process. Okay. So today we want to look at schedule. All right. So in a nutshell, when we are discussing about schedule or scheduling a project, what actually are we talking about, Joseph? Okay. Okay. All right. Kennedy, what about you? From experience, what will you say project scheduling is about? Okay, so you cannot agree with me, hence the need for project scheduling. All right, all right. So when we talk about or when we mention the word schedule, all right, anytime we come across the word schedule in project management, it simply refers to as timing. All right, some organization refer to it as timeline. They can tell you say, okay, let's have a timeline for the project. What they are simply also talking about is what project scheduling. Okay, so project schedule management is, we can look at it categorically from all you have said now. There are three important things that is very very paramount when we talk about project scheduling. There is no way you want to schedule a project without even knowing what to schedule. Okay, then when you now know what to schedule, the next thing is now to put those what you know now in the sequence or the order you want to schedule it, and later when it should be performed. So when we talk about the summary of project schedule management as a whole, it is simply that aspect in your project where you have to begin to define what are the activities, which means what are we going to schedule. Then sequencing of the activities in what order are we going to schedule them, and the development and control of the activities. When are we going to perform those activities? So you can see that this question of defining the activities, which explain, which is telling us that what are we going to schedule, and that has been answered with the help of scope management or scoping. Because remember, in scope management, we said scoping is exactly what work to be done. So what are we going to do is simply those work that we have discussed about that needs to be done. So that is exactly what we are going to do. So we are going to be able to know those work we are going to do and put those work in the order in which we need those work to be performed. And the logical order of those work is what we refer to as what? Sequencing. All right. And also we are going to look at when are we going to perform those tasks. So if we have known the activity from the beginning and we now sequence those activities, then now after we have sequenced them, when exactly or what amount of time should we allocate for each of those activities that we have sequenced? So these are the things that make up the project schedule management. So anytime you have opportunity of thinking of scheduling a project, you are going to ask yourself these three basic questions. What is it that we want to do? Okay, you take note of them. All right, now it is from that knowledge you are now going to sequence them, which means in what order are we going to perform all these tasks, and when should we start performing the task. These three questions are very important when it comes to what? Scheduling a project. And I said what? Scheduling simply means timing, ensuring that we are following a definite time to complete our project. All right, that is the simple meaning of what? Scheduling. Okay, now what are the project management process we need to follow in order for us to be able to schedule or carry out project scheduling? As you can see on the screen, we have plan scheduling management, which means which is to be carried out under planning process group. We have define activity, which is to be carried out under planning. We have sequence activity, which is to be carried out under planning. We have estimate activity duration, which is to be carried out under planning. Then we now have develop schedule, which is carried out under planning. Then we now have control schedule, which is carried out under monitoring and controlling. So you can see that all these are the project management process. So like I told you in scope, that if you are asked in a real life scenario and they say, oh Joseph, come, let's put a plan for the schedule for this project. I told you that the project management process that you are to follow is to follow this process under you have plan schedule management. Just like as you can see, plan schedule management. So in real life project, to actually plan for your schedule, all this process under, which means the first thing you have to do is to define the activities. What are those activities? You can see the same repetition. Requesting those activities, sequencing them. In what order are we going to perform those activities? Now putting an amount of time those activities should be performed. That is what? Estimate activity duration. Develops the entire graphical illustration for all this and control schedule. So in a real life project, all these are the things we need to do. All these are the things we need to do. So let's look at them one after the other. Plan schedule management. Plan schedule management. So in plan schedule management, like I said earlier, it involves documenting how you will plan, manage, and control project schedule. So plan schedule management is simply the policies. So plan schedule management is simply the policies that we have put in place, the procedures we want to put in place to ensure we are able to document how we are going to plan, how we are going to manage schedule, and how we are going to control schedule, okay, throughout the project. Now, in this planning of schedule management, at the end of the day, it becomes a guide and direction on how project or how schedule will be managed throughout the project. All right. So this is the process where you sit down and plan. Like I told you now, that if you are asked to plan, I said that all these other activities under are exactly what you are planning for. So which means you are going to think of what are the procedures, the policies we need to follow in order to do all these things and document them down. It becomes what? Your plan schedule management. Okay, so please take note of that. So in this plan schedule management, this is the time where you begin to ask questions like who will be involved and what approach are we taking to plan the schedule for the project. These are the questions you like. You start asking what processes and procedure we will use to create the schedule. All right, so that is the concept of plan schedule management. So what are we trying to achieve under this process? What we are trying to achieve is to have the schedule management plan. So the schedule management plan automatically becomes the document to guide the project manager and every member of the team, all right, and those that will still join the team in the future on how the schedule for the project will be managed. Okay, and also if there will be need to make use of software, that will also be documented. You know, in project management they have some project management tools. All right, Joseph, are you familiar with any project management tools? Kennedy, what about you? Are you familiar with any project management tools that is used for scheduling a project? Hello, are you there, Joe? Okay. Okay, so what did you call it? You said what? Smart, what did you call it? Okay, okay. Okay. No, okay. Okay. But Kennedy, what about you? Are you familiar with any scheduling tools in projects? Hello, Kennedy, are you saying something? We can't hear you if you are saying something. Hello, Kennedy, are you there? All right, so let's move on. But what I'm trying to say regarding the scheduling tool that is also talked about, right? You may have heard of Primavera. You may have heard of Microsoft projects. Okay, you have heard of even some online tools. All right, like ClickUp, Monday, Gantt project. There are several scheduling tools that is used. We refer to them as project tools or project management tools. Okay, or they are softwares used for managing projects. They help you to be able to schedule your project very well and don't lose track. Okay. All right. So that is what we want to achieve while we plan. So in that document, we are going to have all those things stated, documented. All right. What is the model development, the level of accuracy we want, unit of measures, reporting format, and several other things you feel like documenting that is needed to control the schedule of your project. Okay. Now we said that when we are planning, the first thing we should do is to define activities. Now the question is, what is define? What do we mean by define activities? And also, what is an activity? Okay, so these small questions are the things we are going to ask ourselves. Now, please take note. All right, when we use the word activity, we can also refer to activity as task. Okay, when we say we define activity, so that it will not look somehow, we can say define task. Now, on this context of define activity, take note, you can't successfully define an activity without your WBS. And what is a WBS? We discussed it during scoping. Is a work breakdown structure created by the project management team and the project team, not management team, sorry, created by the project team. All right, and I say by project team, I'm making reference to the project manager and everybody working on the project. So WBS is created, which is a breakdown of the work component that will be performed. Now, when we're discussing scoping, we said that the lowest level of a WBS, when we get to the point we can no longer break down, is what we refer to as work package. And we define work package as the amount of work that can be assigned to an organization or a group of people or an individual to go and perform. That becomes what? A work package. Now, but when it comes to every work package, there are series of tasks that needs to be done, to be carried out to perform a work package. Those series of tasks is what we refer to as defined activity. If, for instance, you are having or you have the privilege of having or creating a WBS for a 3 unit bedroom, all right, 3 units, all right, and now, which means you're going to have, uh, let's say, 3 bedroom flats in 3 places. Okay, let's assume that. Now you are designing you have created a WBS. Now, the WBS for such, if the place is a neutral and a very good land, will be that first and foremost, we are going to clear the land. That will be a work package. All right, you break it down. What are the tasks we need to do to build a 3 unit, um, 3 bedroom flat? So, okay. Now we're not starting from all the documentation now, licensing and all those things you need to get from government and all that, buying of the land. No, we're not starting from there. So we're not saying that, okay, for instance, you need to clear the land. All right. Or yes, if the land is a very portable land and good land, you need to clear all the bushes. After clearing the bushes, the next one is to perform foundation. Then after foundation, the next step is to do block work. After block work, the next step is to do maybe decking. After decking, the next step will be to do your roofing. All right. After roofing, the next step will to do your plastering, and also you also do your toilet fittings, plumbing work, electrical work, tiling, then the final fittings. Let's assume that will now become a work package after you have done the breakdown. Now, in such a case, now let's now pick foundation as a work package. Remember, you have done the WBS now, so you have the last one, foundation, uh, tiling, work, block work, all this and all this stated out. Now, define activities is now saying that Let's pick that work package called foundation. What are the tasks that needs to be performed to say that we have achieved foundation in a project? Those tasks are what we refer to as defined activity. So which means when you have a work package and you break out the task that needs to be performed to complete a work package, what are you doing? You are defining activities. So if, for instance, a foundation laying is a work package, now quickly, what are the tasks we need to do to perform foundation? Yes, Joseph. If foundation laying is a work package, what are the tasks that needs to be done to perform, to complete, and for us to say yes, we have done foundation in a project? Yes, what are the tasks? Joe, are you there? Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. Exactly. Hello, we can't hear you. Okay. You, to complete. So you can see what you have explained now. You can see different tasks that needs to be done. Now the question is, if you are doing that, is it one person you are going to give to do it? No. So the person that will be clearing will be different, total may be different from the person that will do the mapping. The person that will do the mapping may be different from the person that will do the digging, cutting out of all the rooms. That will now, okay, somebody came and did the mapping of the room, cut out. Somebody else will come and dig. Somebody else will mix the granite and concrete, cement and sand together. Somebody else will have to go and pour it. Somebody else will do the blinding. Somebody else will now put block and begin to raise the block. Somebody else will have to, you can see different tasks that needs to be done just to perform foundation. So the so that is exactly all those different tasks is what refers to as what defined activities. So if you are working on foundation, for example, defining all those tasks that needs to be done as regard to that foundation, you are doing what? Defined activities. And take note, you see that like this plenty grammar we wrote here, you said is the process that helps to break down the project work into activities. Bam. That one is plenty grammar. But from that explanation, we now understood what defined activity means. Okay, so if you look at our definition, we said is the process of identifying and documenting the specific actions to be performed. So you can see it now. So our focus of defined activity is on specific actions. So you can see that under foundation work package, you are now looking at what are those specific actions that I need to perform under foundation. So that is what define activities. Do you get that, please? It's clear, right? Kennedy, is that clear? All right. So now, what do we want to achieve? And what do we want to achieve when we define activities? Yes, Joe. Okay, sir. Define, please listen. Oh, WBS is done when you are scoping, when you are performing scope. And remember when we were discussing WBS, I told you that if you are able to perform your WBS, I told you that you have solved how many percent? That you have solved about 60% of the project problem. If you can still remember, I mentioned it categorically, all right, that you have solved more problems than you can imagine. And I told you that categorically that define WBS helps you to estimate. WBS helps you to evaluate risk. WBS help you to put all the work in alignment. WBS help you to organize your work. WBS help you to do several things. So WBS is the diagrammatic view of all the work you need to do in your project. Do you understand that? It's that diagram that shows, oh, this is what we will do. So it gives you that an overview of what needs to be done. So now we're now saying that defined activity is now in sequencing. All right, is now in scheduling. Sorry. So defined activity is now in scheduling, which is expressly coming to the point whereby you need to also further break down and get the task that needs to be performed. Because now, excuse me, sir, if you look at the activities you just did now for us, the breakdown of foundation, you will discover that it becomes easy for you to assign who is going to clear. It becomes easy for you to assign who is going to do the mapping. It becomes easy for you to assign who is going to do the digging. It becomes easy for you to assign who is going to do the blinding and who is going to mix the concrete and granite and everything together. It becomes easy for you to assign who is going to perform the block work. Do you get it now? That is defined activity. So defined activity is in sequencing of your project. So you need to define the activity so that you can be able to schedule and sequence your project. You need WBS so that you can have an overview of all the scope of work that needs to be done in the project. Then defined activity is now the nitty-gritty, the actual physical task that will be performed to achieve that work package. Is that clear, Mr. Joe? Or any other question for us? Hello, Joe, any other question? Hello, Joseph, any other question? Okay, so let's move on. So for what technique are we using for defining activity? You can see decomposition. And decomposition is the breaking down. And what are we breaking down? The work package and getting out the task that needs to be done to fulfill a work package. That is what we mean by what? Decomposition. You can see meeting is there, so which means we can decide to have meeting. Let's sit down and discuss it, everybody. Or you can decide to use expert judgment, look for somebody who have experience. Or we can decide to use rolling wave. I will explain rolling wave later as we move on. Now, what do we want to achieve? We want to achieve an activity list, activity attribute, and milestone list, and possibly make a change request. If we have defined an activity wrongly, we can easily say, no, let's not do this activity, let's change it and do another activity. Okay, so what is an activity list? An activity list as a sound is, let's say for instance, those let's say the work package foundation, all the tasks that needs to be completed that you have written down. You will clear the land, map the land, and dig the mapping or digging the land, pouring of blending. Somebody, okay, there's going to be a mixture of granite and all that needs to be mixed. Then somebody will do the blending and laying of block work and all that. So defined activity list will now be a comprehensive list of all the activities that have been defined. So if you now look at all the work package for the entire project, okay, foundation, all the activities have been defined, you take note of them. Um, Block work, all the activities that needs to be done to fulfill block work, you take note of them. Roofing or decking, all the activities that needs to be done to carry out decking, you take note of them. Roofing, plastering. So all those different activities compiled and documented in a document refers to, or what to refers to as what? Activity list. Then when we use the word, when we explain the word activity attribute, activity attribute is more like an explanation to what you have in your activity list. So just as it stands, activity attribute is more like what? An explanation. Okay, so activity attribute is like an explanation. So this is an example of activity list for first floor block walling. So you can see all the activities that have been spelled out to fulfill or perform this work package, first floor block walling. All right, did you get that, please? Hello, Joe. Is that clear? Kennedy. All right. Okay. So that is all right. So this is what activity. So you can see that all the different work package you have in your project, by the time you do the breakdown of all the tasks that needs to be done, compile them together, it forms what refers to as one activity list. Activity attribute is an explanation of what you have in your activity list. Okay. Then I also said I will explain what is that word again? I will explain all right, rolling wave. All right. Now, what is a rolling wave or a rolling wave planning? It is a very familiar term in project management. All right. Or it is a strategy, is a tools or a technique that can be used by project managers whenever they are carrying out their projects. What is a rolling wave, or what do we mean by rolling wave planning? Rolling wave planning, example, let me not speak plenty grammar. Let me give you an example. All right, you have succeeded in doing your WBS. Okay, the first part of your WBS, the first work package is foundation laying. The second work package is block work. The third work package is maybe roofing. The fourth work package is plastering. The fifth work package is maybe tiling and plumbing and all those things. Now, rolling wave planning is that kind of planning where the project manager, instead of him to plan everything from the beginning to the end, he decides to focus on that foundation aspect. He decides to focus on that foundation aspect and make that plan of the foundation aspect more details before he decide to plan next for the other part or the other work package, which is block work. So which means though he have block work plan in view, but he focus more on foundation laying until he finish the foundation laying. He will now move progressively to block work plan. When he finish the block work plan, he move progressively to maybe plastering or roofing. So that is what we call it, the rolling wave strategy or technique of planning. So which means instead of sitting down to plan everything together from the beginning to the end, you now say that, okay, this particular task that I need to perform now, let me put all my effort to plan in detail for it and worry less about the next task that follows. That strategy is what we refer to as the rolling wave. Is that clear? So it is a strategy used in project management when you are planning. You decide to say, okay, instead of me to concentrate all my effort in planning everything once that I need to do, let me just put my effort more on planning for this one that is very immediate. or maybe because it's urgent, or maybe because it's top priority. Let me attend to this one first. When I'm done with this and we start executing, I will go to the next one and start planning in details. What you are doing, you are using the rolling wave technique of planning. All right? So that is very important when we discuss scheduling. Then another thing again about scheduling is what? A milestone. What is a milestone? There is no way you will talk about schedule without talking about a milestone. All right, a milestone in project are those significant events within the project schedule. All right, so are those significant events? What are those significant events that must be accomplished or achieved that you can lay hold on as an achievement within the project schedule? That becomes what? A milestone. But you must take note that, for example, for the purpose of exam, a milestone does not have a duration. All right, you can't allocate time for a milestone. A milestone becomes an accomplishment when it has been achieved. So if it is not achieved, then it is not yet a milestone. All right, let's say for instance now, if you are looking at that the 3 units of 3 bedroom, you see that the milestone for such a project will be that, okay, we have been able to lay foundation. It becomes a significant event you can reference to show that you are making progress or you have accomplished something in your project. Yes, for that 3 bedroom unit project, we have been able to lay foundation. So we are hoping that before we know it, in the next couple of weeks, we are done with our roofing and block laying and block work. So all the now it is now when you are now done that it becomes a milestone. So a list of all your milestone in your project becomes what refers to as what? Your milestone list. All right, is that clear? It becomes what refers to as your what? Milestone list. Okay, so that is that about defining activities. All right, so defining activities is in scheduling, while WBS is in scope management. Okay, take note. Excuse me, sir. When we talk about defining activity, is it just the project manager that will sit down to define the activity? No. It must be the project team. Okay? So take note. It must be the team. Excuse me, sir. Why do you have to involve the team? Please note it down. Excuse me, sir. Why do we have to involve the team? Involving the team helps define involving the team helps define the activity completely and accurately. Therefore, it makes the estimate more accurate. Just like as I asked Joseph, you can see that Joseph was able to point out all the major tasks that needs to be performed under foundation. So if you have a project manager that have not done foundation before, it will become difficult for him to sit down and bring out those tasks. So, but Joseph being a team member who have experience in foundation, involving Joseph in the meeting where we are defining the activities to complete foundation, you see that it becomes easy for the project manager. It makes the work accurate. It makes the work complete. That is the essence of what? Involving the team. So take note for the purpose of exam. It is not the project manager that sits in the office and define those activities. The only time the project manager can sit in the office and do that is when they've already done it in previous projects and it is a similar project. It can just go back to the OPA of the organization and pick the lesson learned documentations from previous project and use on the current project without disturbing the team. Okay, take note of that for the exam purpose. Then after we have been able to define the activities, the question now is, in what order are we going to perform that activity? That is sequencing, the logical sequence. Let's look at the example we have of foundation. Why is it that we are not digging first before we clear? Why is it that in that foundation activities that Joseph help us to define? Why is it that we have to clear first before we do our mapping? Why is it that we have to finish mapping before we do our digging? Why is it that, why do we have to follow that sequence? Why don't we pour the concrete and do the blending first before we start digging or start clearing? Why do we have to follow that logical order? That is what sequencing. In what order will the task be performed? That is the concept of what? Sequencing. So sequencing, please take note, it is strictly based on the order in which a task will be performed. That is the simple English for sequencing. I don't want to speak all this plenty grammar you have on the screen. That is a simple explanation for what? Sequencing your activity. So you can see now, they did not say sequencing the work package, but rather they say sequencing the activities, which means those tasks that have been broken down expressly needs to be what? Sequenced. All right, did you get it now? So that is the activities you are sequencing. So let's look at it. Now we know what sequencing means. What do we want to achieve when we are able to sequence our work? What we want to achieve is what refers to as what? The project schedule network diagram. That is what we want to achieve. The project schedule network diagram. All right. Now, how do we want to achieve it? You can see the basic techniques that have been stated here. We have precedent diagramming method. We have dependency determination. We have integration also. We have leads and lag. And we have the project management information system. Okay. So we're going to look at all these one after the other. We're going to look at all these techniques one after the other. Now, the first technique we are going to look at is the precedent diagramming method, because now we are looking at sequencing. How effective is this method, and what is this method about? The precedent diagramming method actually is that method that we use in project management, just like as a sound, precedent. What task follow the other? So precedent diagramming method is the diagram or the illustration in a diagrammic way showing the task that follows one after the other. So with the precedent diagramming method is also an example of activity on nodes. So now take note, let me explain. You can see some plenty grammar here. In the precedent diagramming method, take note, activity are represented by nodes. Okay? Why the linking or the logical relationship, why the linking is that shows the relationship. Example, that is this arrow now. This is an example on the screen now. This small rectangular box that you can see A is what refers to as nodes, which means the A is in a rectangular box. So this rectangular box is where you have an activity or the task. But you know, in this diagram, we cannot begin to write all the name of the task. So we just use alphabets. All right, note that. We cannot say the first thing, clear the bush or clear the land. Second thing, map the land for digging. Fourth and third thing, digging, but because it will look somehow in the diagram. So in case you are saying A, B, C, so all this A, B, C is, it represents an activities that have been what? Defined. Okay, do you get it now? It represents an activities that have been what? Defined. So because it represents an activity that have been defined, please take note. Hence, we have it in this format. Now, this arrow is showing us the relationship. So what this arrow is showing us is showing us the precedent, how it flows, which means when we start the project, the arrow is showing us that we have to start activity A and also start activity F together. You can see that when we finish activity A, we must start activity B. You can see the flow. So all this is what refers to as the network schedule diagram. All right. So sequencing of our project helps us to create a network schedule diagram. So by the time you sequence your project, the logical sequence from the start to the finish, what have you successfully done? You have successfully created a network diagram showing the connectivity of each task that needs to be performed, and in the logical sequence they are to be performed. Okay, then apart from this, there's another example that is not commonly used, the arrow diagramming method. You can see that in this case the arrow is representing activity, while this one that is the node is now showing the connectivity. All right, so this node is now showing us that this the connectivity, while the activity is not in the arrow. But take note, this is obsolete. All right, no recent or modern project management scheduling use the arrow diagramming method. All right, is very obsolete. So technically, using this to create the network schedule diagram, you are creating problem in your project. So it is obsolete. So the recent or the current scheduling network or project scheduling network used is the precedent diagramming method. So you can see it's showing us which activity follows the other activities. Okay, so in every project, please take note, so in our precedent diagramming method, we simply have 4 types of logical sequence. We have 4 types of logical sequence. As you can see in your screen, we have the first one, which is the finish to start. And it is noted here, it is the most commonly used sequence. You have the finish to finish, you have the start to start, and you have the start to finish, which is rarely used. So any of this logical sequence can be used when creating your network or constructing your network diagram. So what do we mean by finish to start logical relationship? Yes, Joe. Finish to start logical relationship. What do we mean? Okay. All right. Okay. That is correct. Kennedy, what about you? What do you have to say on that? Okay. All right. That is very correct. All right. So you can, in your notes, you can put on top of this P, on top of the finish P, then on top of this start S. So P here means predecessor. On top of this start that you put S, it means successor. So when we say a finish to start logical relationship, we are saying that the successor cannot start until the predecessor has finished. Or if you reverse it, you can say that the predecessor activity must finish before the successor activity can start. Example, you must finish digging a hole before you can start the next activity of planting a tree. Or you must dig first before you pour your, you must dig before you pour your concrete and carry out blinding. That is a finish to start. Then we have a finish to finish. In a finish to finish logical relationship, we are saying that the successor activity cannot finish until the predecessor activity has finished. Or if we reverse it, we can say that the predecessor activity must finish until the successor activity can finish. Example of such an activity, we can look at in a software project, for example, you must finish your documentation. You must, no, not document, you must finish your testing of all your features in your software project before you can finish your documentation. All right, you must finish all that in your software. You must finish testing before you can finish your documentation. All right, so that is very key when we talk about finish to finish or logical relationship. So also in the case of start to start, which means the predecessor activity must have started before the successor activity can start. Or if we reverse it, successor activity cannot start until predecessor activity have started. Okay, so if you look at also a software project, you must start designing first before you can start coding. Right. So you see that somebody who is designing, the front end developer, will start designing the interface. As he's designing the interface, the programmer will look at what he's designing and start implementing and start coding on it, so that when you click anything, it will react. So you can see that the programmer cannot start work on your software if the front end developer who is designing the interface have not started designing. Do you get it? Do you understand that, sir? So we call that a start to start logical relationship. Then this start to finish is, like we said in our earlier statement, we said that it is rarely used because it does not really make sense. But we put it there for the purpose of exam. But when we say start to finish, we are saying the predecessor activity must start before the successor activity can finish. What kind of project or do you think of any better example for this? That the successor activity will have to finish first before you can start the predecessor activity. Anybody with any example? That is, if you look at it, if you think deeply about it, you see that it's more like doing your project backward. How can you say that before you start a project, before you start an activity, the other activities in the front must finish first? Like for instance, let's look at a building project. Now you are saying that before you start laying, clearing the land, doing foundation and all that, you must have finished roofing before you start that. So that logical relationship does not follow. So that is why most often it is rarely used. All right, but for the purpose of exam, it exists. Hello, do you get that, please? All right, for the purpose of exam, it exists. Now, at what point? The next thing we want to talk about is dependency determination. What is dependency determination about? What are we actually planning to talk about? What do we mean by dependency determination? Just as the word sound, Dependency determination, all right, is how do we come about the logical relationship? What were the factors you have to consider before you can allow two activities to follow one another? That is what refers to as dependency determination. It tries to explain the logical relationship between two tasks. Why is it that the project manager will have to allow you to do this task first before you do the next task? What informed the reason of the project manager? Or why would the project manager say that we have to clear first before we have to do mapping? What determined that sequence? Or let's look at another sequence. What determined the sequence where the project manager will have to say that we have to do block work first before we start doing plumbing work? After all, we have laid foundation. What informed the sequence? Why would the project manager insist that we must do block work first before we can say we want to start doing plumbing work or electrification work or roofing? Hence, we need to talk about dependency determination. In every project, every logical sequence have a reason, an explanation behind why those logical sequences are in that format. And that reason is what we refer to as dependency determination. So for the purpose of this class, we have 4 types of dependency determination. The first type is the mandatory dependency. The second type is the what also refers to as hard logic. Please take note for all this because of exam. Discretionary dependency also refers to as soft logic or preferential logic. We have the external dependency and what internal dependency. So we'll look at them one after the other. When we say mandatory dependency, what we are trying to say in this context is that we are trying to come up with a logic by saying that we are performing this task in this logical sequence because it is expected of us by contract or by the nature of work. Hence, that is referred to as mandatory dependency. Like in the case of foundation laying, which explained that you must dig a hole before you do blinding. That digging and doing blinding is mandatory for you to follow that. Number one reason, because that is how the nature of work is. Because for that particular nature of work, it is expected you follow that pattern. There is no way logically you can do blinding first before you start digging, because the nature of work cannot make it that way. Or maybe it is required of you by contract, then you follow mandatory dependency. When we say it is required by contract, which means the company that gave you the project stated that you must do this one first before you do this, before you do this. That is how they want it in the contract. Then your sequencing will become mandatory in nature. Then number 2, we have discretionary dependency. We said discretionary dependency can be referred to as soft logic and preferential logic, which means there are different ways we can follow this sequencing, but this is the best we prefer. So discretionary dependency is that it is now the project manager or the organization that determine a particular sequencing or following a logical sequence that best suits them, not because there is no other logical sequence to follow or any other dependency to look at, but because that is what they prefer. That is what they want as a sequence. I don't know if you see some people who you advise, and this thing we want to do this way, we can do it this way. They can give you their reason, 1001 reason. You say, well, we know that it will give you the same answer, but we prefer it this way. That kind of idea is what we refer to as what? Discretionary dependency. All right? There are best practices for what you need to do, but the project manager or the organization preferred a desired sequence. They are the one that we like to follow this pattern, Joe. Don't worry yourself. It becomes what? Discretionary. Then the third one is internal. All right. I don't want to follow all this plenty grammar that you can see on the screen. When we say an internal dependency determination, what are we talking about? This is that sequencing of a project that the project manager have to consider the team members. So the internal team members becomes a reason for sequencing the project. Example, maybe Kunle, who is supposed to do task A, all right, for example, internal dependency, maybe Kunle, who is supposed to do task A, is not available at the moment, maybe because he needs to go for his uncle burial, or he needs to do his wedding. We can't say let's stop the project. Then the project manager now consider Kunle, who will go for wedding, and say, okay, why Kunle will not be around? He's going for wedding. Okay, let Wale carry out this other task. So which means Wale's task will come first before Kunle's task. Why did they do it that way? Because of internal dependency. So internal dependency is dependent, or it is focused on the project team control. All right. So it is now the project team. Oh, I've just given that example now. Somebody can decide not to be around. You now consider that and say, okay, let's arrange it because this person will not be around this day. Let's arrange it. Okay, you do your own first. Then when you are done, this person will have time to do this. That becomes internal because it is the team's factor you consider. External dependency is when you consider the external team factors. External team factors in this context, not your own main team now, which means other factors outside your team, like the regulatory bodies. Oh, because it will take time for you to get clearance from the port because of their back and forth. Before they will give you approval, it can take 3 weeks. You now say, okay, while we are waiting for that task, let we perform another task. Or maybe the supplier, because what you have ordered for, it needs to take 1 or 2 days before they get to you, or the distance. They have to travel through the road, or they have to use the sea. External dependency, you have to consider that external factors, or the vendors you are bringing on board that are not part of your team. All right, do you get that now? So all these are the determination or the logical sequence determination that determine how the sequencing of our project is. What do we want to achieve by sequencing our project again? We want to achieve a project schedule network diagram. Example, you can see what we want to achieve. These are the activities, and this is the precedence of the activities, and this is now the sequencing diagram. So all these plenty things stated here and the precedent create this diagram for us, which becomes what? Our project schedule network diagram. So with this diagram, we can see that when we start the project, activity A and B we have to start. So activity C will wait for A and B to start before activity C can start. So you can see the arrow, A and B arrow pointing to C. So C cannot start until A and B has been completed. So you can see that D cannot start until A has been completed. So you take a note, activity E cannot start in this diagram until C and D is completed. You can see the logical sequence, the arrow showing us the relationship. All right, the arrow now is what is showing us the relationship. E cannot start until D and E have started. So F cannot start until C have started. G cannot start until E and F has been completed. Is it clear? Kennedy, is that clear? Yes. Okay. Joe, is that clear? Hello, Joe. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's move on. So this is an example of the project schedule network diagram. Okay. And let me look at these two techniques, leads and lag. Yes, Kennedy, what is the difference between leads and lag in projects? Okay. Joe, what about you? What will you say to that? Are you concurring with Kennedy? Hello, Joe, are you there? Joseph, are you there? So I was asking, are you concurring with Kennedy? Okay, you are. Oh, okay. All right. Take note, please. Okay, but you can hear me, right? Oh, okay. All right. So, what is a lead? Take note. Example. The explanation of Kennedy is not. It doesn't explain what leads and lag is in project management. Please take note for exam's sake. All right. So, what Kennedy explained is not what we refer to as lead and lag. What is a lead? Example. You are supposed to start an activity on your project on Tuesday, next week Tuesday, all right? And you decide to start today. So starting today has given you a lead of how many days? Hello, are we together? Starting today has given you a lead of how many days? 3 days. So that is what a lead is. A lead is in a project is starting earlier than schedule. You can say you have a lead. Anything that will make you start earlier than you have scheduled in your project is what we refers to as a lead. Okay? Just as I explained it, you have a task. You now say, okay, instead of me to wait until I start that 3 days task, let me just start now and be doing it small, small. What have you done? So even you will still have extra time, you'll be playing around, be doing it small, small, which means you have a lead. Then what is a lag? A lag is the waiting time. So lag simply means delay. Lag simply means delay. It is referred to as what? A waiting time. Like the time you have to wait before the approval of a document comes is a lag. Or the time you have to wait when you do your casting. All right? When you do a casting, is it immediately you do casting, you start laying block on it? So that time you have to wait for that casting to be dried or solidified before you start laying block or doing another thing on top. We refer to it as lag. So you see that you as a project manager must take note of this. It gives you an advantage in your project. Why? When you are planning, you must incorporate a lead or lag in it. Which means you have to know those activities that will bring delay, that will waste your time, that will make you to wait small and plan with it. So if a task is going to make you to wait small, then you now think of which other task can we be doing while we are waiting for that one to be ready. Do you understand that? That is why it is a tools or technique that the project manager must use in order to be able to schedule or take advantage of the scheduling of the project. We refer to it as what? Lead and lag. Okay? So take note of that. Then the next thing we'll look at shortly before we begin to wrap up is estimate activity duration. Estimate activity duration. Now, without speaking plenty grammar, just look at the title, estimate. What are we estimating? Activity, the duration. So estimate activity duration, we are estimating the duration or the amount of time or the amount of work period a task or an activity can be performed. So if, for instance, let's go back to our foundation work package, clearing the bush that will lay our foundation is an activity. Estimate activity duration is now asking, what is the number of work period or the amount of days or time it can take us to finish clearing that bush or clearing the land before we can start mapping. It is possible that there are trees that you have to remove stump. It is possible you have to do several things just in the clearing process. So activity clearing, what is the amount of days or time we want to attach or we will estimate for it? That is estimate activity duration. Okay, mapping of the land before digging. What amount of time do we need to put in mapping? That is an estimate activity duration. So estimate activity duration, we are saying that what is the number of hours? It could be in hours, it could be in day, it could be in weeks, it could be in months. It now depends on the organization or the project manager. So if, for instance, we are estimating our project, we are using a unit like days, we can say that, okay, this activity to take us 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. If we're using hours, we can say that this activity will take us 48 hours, 50 hours, 70 hours. So estimate activity duration is that time where the project manager and his team begin to look at, okay, how many days will it take us to complete a project? Okay, this work package now, all right, this activity clearing, how many days do you think we will need to use to clear this ground? All right, like if it's an estate kind of project now where you need to put 3 units of a 3-bedroom flat, which means it may not just be something you just do one day, except you are bringing more resources to perform that task. Okay, and if there needs to be removal of storm, you can see that that cannot just be done in one day. All right, so it now depends. So that is estimate activity duration. What do we want to achieve in this project, in this process? What we want to achieve is to actually have the activity duration of, now it is strictly based on activity. So what we want to achieve is to have the duration of each activities. Basis of estimate is simply the explanations. Basis of estimate is simply the explanations backing up that estimations. Just say, for instance, now somebody give you an estimate of 5 days to complete a task. You're not asking, how did you arrive at 5 days? What do you want to do? What do you mean 5 days? So how do you arrive at these 5 days? What is your reason for these 5 days? That explanation the person will give to you to help explain why he chose 1 day, 2 days, 3 days is what we refer to as basis of estimate. Okay, I hope that is clear. So quickly we're going to look at all the techniques for estimation. We're going to look at the various techniques for estimation. Or should we stop here? Because this one is very important. I don't want Joe to miss that. Hello, Kennedy, what do you suggest? Okay, All right, so let's just finish this. All right, let's finish the estimation technique. At least let's be able to achieve something on that. At least before, let's see what we can achieve before it. Okay, so what are the possible estimation techniques? Please note, all the estimation technique for scheduling is the same estimation technique for resources, is the same estimation technique for costs. That is what. So estimation technique, we are going to learn now. When we are discussing costs, we just make reference to it. When we are discussing scheduling resources, because you have to estimate the number of people you are going to put on a task, we also make reference to it. So we have four major type of estimation technique. All right, we have four major type of estimation technique. We have the analogous estimation technique, we have the parametric estimation technique, we have the 3-point estimation technique, and we have the bottom-up estimation technique. Okay, so we're going to look at them one after the other. So without speaking too much grammar, what is or what do we mean by analogous estimating technique? Analogous estimating technique. Yes, Kennedy, analogous estimating technique, what do we mean? Okay, all right. Joseph, what about you? What do you think? Analogous estimating technique. Hello, Joseph, are you there? Okay, I just hope Joseph can hear us. Joseph, can you hear us? All right, okay, let's move on. Analogous estimating technique, please note this down. All right, note this down. Analogous estimating technique is that technique that uses expert judgment and historical information to predict the future. Analogous estimating technique is that technique that uses expert judgment and historical information to predict the future. That is what we mean by what? Analogous estimation technique. All right? Take note. That is just one aspect of it. Now, what actually are we talking about, sir? When you say you want to make use of analogous estimating technique, let me first give you an example. If, for instance, last year, all right, you did a 1 unit duplex, for example, one unit, just one duplex, all right, that have all the features you want in a duplex last year. And this year, another organization is giving you another project that is also a duplex. Analogous estimating technique is saying that it is that technique where you estimate on a project that you have done in the past that is similar to the project that you are doing now. So analogous estimating technique is saying that it is that technique where you use the previous project estimate that is similar to the project you are currently working on. That is analogous. That is why we said that analogous estimating technique uses expert judgment and historical information to predict the future. So analogous estimating technique is that technique you use either you want to calculate for cost, you want to find an estimation for cost, estimation for resources, estimation for the project duration, and you are using the previous project that you did before that is similar to the project you are using, and you just go and lift it, pick those values and use in your current estimation. That is what we refer to as analogous. But the key point in that analogous is not just that we are using previous value. All right. It is not just that because we want to use previous information or data from previous project because on this new project, but it is actually because they are similar. So analogous estimation technique works on the principle of similar projects. So if I have a duplex project to work on today, and in the past I have done a duplex project, because the past project and the future project are duplex, what do? I pick the valuation or the estimation of the previous project in the past and use it currently in this project without cracking my brain. It is called analogous estimating technique. Parametric estimating technique is also like an analogous estimating technique, but the problem now is that they are not similar. They don't have to be similar projects. But what then is similar, or what then is parametric, is that it is dependent on statistical variables in a project that was done in the past and is in relationship to the project that you are working on currently. For example, if you did a school project in the past, all right, they gave you a school project to create schools schools in social local government, let's say in aggregate local government, for example, to go through the government schools and create some schools in aggregate local government, for example. All right. Now, because you have done a project in building before, which is not like a school, you see that if you want to estimate the cost and the time it will take you to complete a window decoration, all right, like those window decoration when they are putting POP in a window, for example, you see that in the previous project, maybe an hospital project or a building project or a duplex project you did, and you did that POP around the window, and in the school project you are working on, because it's not like a duplex, it's just normal building, but now the parameters or the variables that are looking similar is that you did a POP around the window in your previous project, and now this project, they are not similar now, but there is need for you to do POP around the school window. So now you are not estimating that, okay, what time or what duration will it take to complete the POP around the window. So if it has been done in a project in the past, you only pick that variable that is similar to the project you are working on. Now, it's not that the two projects are similar, but there are some variables in the previous project and in the current project that are similar. We refer to that as parametric, all right, which means picking a parameter from a project that was done in the past and use that parameter for a current project that you are working on to come up with the estimate is referred to as what? Parametric estimate. Then the third estimating technique is what refers to as 3-point estimating technique. What is a 3-point estimating technique? The 3-point estimating technique is that technique that is used in projects whereby you have to estimate in 3 different ways and get the final average of that estimation. And that will be dependent on these 3 parameters, which will be the most likely estimate M, optimistic estimate O, and pessimistic estimate. Okay, so if for instance you are asking somebody who have experience in a project, and you are asking him, excuse me sir, um, how long do you think it will take me to complete a 3-bedroom flat from experience, from down to finish? How long do you think it can take me? All right. So maybe Joseph will not say, well, um, if the money is there, if there is money to spend, I tell you, it can take you maybe 4 months. That is an optimistic estimate, which is referred to as O, the best case scenario. When money is there, it can take you 4 months. Sharp, sharp, everything will be going. Then you can also say that, well, but if money is not too available, sharp, all right, and we are taking things one by one, then it can take you maybe, instead of that 4 months, it can take you maybe 5 months. That becomes the most likely estimate, which is the realistic expectation. Then pessimistic expectation estimate is now when, oh, well, if the owner of the project is not serious, we are going back and forth, and sometimes, and all those things, well, it can take you not just 5 months, but it will take up to 7 months, and you want to take your time, and as a businessman, you have to have other things to keep the work coming. It can take you 7 months. That becomes what? Pessimistic estimate, which refers to as what? Worst case scenario. Do you get that? Now, these are the 3 parameters that is considered, and the average is taken, which will become your 3-point estimating technique. So 3 points in this context, we are estimating based on the pessimistic, which is the worst case scenario, bad as bad. When everything is okay and good, and when things are fair. All right. So these are the 3-point estimating technique. Now, to calculate for the 3-point estimating technique, we have 2 formulas. The first one is for simple average, which is also referred to as triangular distribution. The first formula is P plus O plus M, close the bracket, divide by 3. So you can see that P represents pessimistic, O represents optimistic, and M represents what? Most likely. Divide by 3. Whatever you have as your answer, it becomes your what? Triangular distribution or simple average. Then the second formula is the beta distribution or weighted average. So you can see that P plus, now it's not just M now, 4M, which is 4 times most likely, plus O, close the bracket, divide by 6. All right, whatever you have as your answer, it becomes your what? Weighted average. Now, excuse me, sir, why do we have 2 formula? Take note, whatever answers you have, they will be almost close. But why do we use the weighted average more? Or better still, the simple average does not give room for risk considerations. So which means technically you will not too much rely on it. Why? Because it did not give room for risk consideration. It's just straight to the point. Why also the weighted average, it gives stronger consideration for your risk. So that is why you can see that they now say times 4 times n. Alright, please take note. This weighted average formula is more reliable because it gives what consideration for risk in the estimate. While the better and the simple average or triangular distribution is also good, but it did not give us consideration for risk. Okay, is that clear? All right. So all these are just the formula. Is that clear? Hello, is that clear, guys? Okay. Joe, what about you? Is that clear? Oh, Joseph network is really poor today. I just hope he can hear us. Hello, Joseph, can you hear us? Just wave your hand if you can hear us. Give us a hand wave if you can hear us. Hello, Joe, can you hear us? Joseph, can you hear us? Okay, so before we close, Joseph, can you hear us? Hello, Joe, are you there? Can you hear us? Okay, let's quickly do this small exercise. All right, Kennedy, let's do this exercise quickly. Okay, so write down. Hello, Kennedy, can you hear me? All right. Okay, so I want to dictate the question for you now. Okay, so let's say you are going to travel from Lagos to Ibadan. You are going to travel from Lagos to Ibadan. And in that journey, the most likely time you can get to Ibadan is the most likely time you can get to Ibadan is 90 minutes. And the optimistic time you can get to Ibadan is 60 minutes. And why the pessimistic time you can get to Ibadan, why the pessimistic time you can get to Ibadan is 120 minutes. Using the simple and weighted average, calculate the 3-point estimation. Using the simple and weighted average, calculate the 3-point estimation. Most likely is 90 minutes. Optimistic time you will get to Ibadan is 60 minutes. And the pessimistic time you will get to Ibadan is 120 minutes. What is the 3-point estimating technique when you calculate using the simple average and weighted average? Okay. Yes, if you are using the weighted average, the 4 is constant. Yes. Okay, what about the simple average? See the formula here and the other formula here. Okay, so let me go to where is O optimistic. I said that the most likely time you will get to Ibadan is 90 minutes. Yes, now is 90 minutes. Then the optimistic time is 60 minutes, while the pessimistic time is 120 minutes. Then I said you should calculate using simple average and weighted average. Okay. No, no. Yes, I can hear you. Okay. Okay, all right. The answer you are supposed to get should be 90 for the simple average and weighted average. All right. Now let's do the simple average together. Maybe from there you now do the weighted yourself as homework. Pessimistic is which no, what did I say is pessimistic? Yeah. Oh, I said 120, 120. Okay. Okay, so 120 plus optimistic, which is 60, plus 90, which is most likely. Divide by 3 will give you what? Exactly. All right. So use the same way. So use the same way for the other formula and you will get it. All right. So hopefully it's clear, right? Okay. One. All right. All right. Okay, no problem. So we start in our tomorrow by God's grace develop schedule. All right. So see you tomorrow by God's grace. So let's stop here for today.